For centuries, the world has celebrated Leonardo da Vinci as a painter, an inventor, and a visionary without equal. But the truth behind his genius runs far deeper than the soft shadows of the Mona Lisa or the perfect geometry of the Vitruvian Man. Leonardo was not merely creating art, he was dissecting reality itself. He believed that to paint a face, one must first understand the skull beneath it. To capture a smile, one must learn how nerves tighten, how muscles lift, how emotion shapes flesh from the inside out. And so he cut open the human body, peeling back layer after layer, searching for the secret behind life's quiet movements. His fascination was not morbid, it was curious, relentless, insatiable. Leonardo once wrote in his notebooks, "Describe the tongue of the woodpecker," a sentence so unusual, so precise, that it captures the essence of the man himself. Where others saw the ordinary, Leonardo saw a mystery waiting to be understood. This curiosity would lead him into anatomy, engineering, hydrodynamics, flight, architecture, and finally into the depths of the human spirit. Leonardo was born in 1452 in a small village near Vinci, the illegitimate child of a local woman and a Florentine notary. But this accident of birth became the blessing that shaped his destiny. Free from the rigid expectations of the educated elite, he escaped a future trapped behind legal documents. Instead, he grew up surrounded by fields, streams, animals, and the quiet patterns of the natural world. He was taught practical mathematics, not classical rhetoric. He struggled with Latin but mastered observation, his true language. At the age of 14, his father placed him in the workshop of Andrea del Verrocchio, one of Florence's greatest artists. Inside those walls, Leonardo learned to sculpt veins that pulsed with life and to paint faces that breathed emotion. He studied the subtle tilt of a head, the tension in a wrist, the way a figure could shift weight in silence. In Verrocchio's studio, it soon became clear the apprentice was beginning to outshine the master. Leonardo's angel in the baptism of Christ glowed with a softness and vitality that eclipsed the figures around it. His brush captured something Verrocchio's hand could not, a sense of motion suspended in time. Florence saw it, artists whispered about it, and the young man from Vinci began to rise. Yet Leonardo was not driven by ambition. He was driven by inquiry. He studied the geometry of faces, the movement of water, the shadows cast by distant hills. He experimented with mechanisms, sketched weapons for war, crafted musical instruments, and wrote endlessly in mirrored script across thousands of pages. He created more ideas than he could ever finish. His workshop filled with young assistants, ideas, half-completed paintings, and scraps of inventions that the world would not understand for centuries. By his late 20s, Florence felt too small for his imagination. When a diplomatic mission brought him before the Duke of Milan, Leonardo saw an opportunity. In a letter that would become legendary, he offered his mind not as a painter, but as an engineer. He promised bridges stronger than any built before, cannons more accurate than existing designs, machines for war, for construction, for spectacle. Only at the very end, almost shyly, did he mention that he could also paint. The Duke accepted, and Leonardo's life entered its most transformative chapter. When Leonardo arrived in Milan, he entered a world hungry for spectacle, innovation, and power. The Duke saw in him not just an artist, but an architect of possibility, a man capable of reshaping both war and beauty. Under the Duke's patronage, Leonardo explored every discipline that stirred his imagination. He advised on the massive dome of the Milan Cathedral, applying a philosophy he believed was universal. The proportions of the human body could guide the proportions of architecture. This idea came alive in his Vitruvian Man, a perfect harmony of science and art, geometry and anatomy, body and cosmos. It was more than a drawing. It was a declaration that nature follows patterns and that genius lies in understanding them. But Leonardo's most daring explorations took place not in cathedrals or courts, but in the quiet corners of anatomy rooms. Over the years, he dissected around 30 human corpses, peeling back the secrets of life with the precision of a surgeon and the wonder of a poet. His drawings of skulls, bones, muscles, and organs were not sketches, they were revelations. The first accurate depiction of the frontal sinus, the intricate networks of nerves, the swirling currents inside the aorta that allowed heart valves to close. His discovery that the heart was a muscle, not a vessel of heat or spirit, challenged centuries of medical belief. In the dim light of those rooms, Leonardo was mapping the human machine centuries before science could verify his findings. His obsession with motion, how blood flowed, how bodies walked, how water surged, expanded into new territories. He studied rivers with the same intensity he gave to faces. Water, to Leonardo, was a force capable of both creation and destruction. His drawings of the deluge, massive floods and swirling tempests, were visions of nature unleashed. Yet behind these apocalyptic sketches lay the mind of an engineer searching for mastery. He designed canals, dams, and machines capable of moving mountains of earth. He even proposed a bold plan to divert the Arno River, cutting off Pisa from the sea. Had it succeeded, history itself might read differently. But Leonardo's dreams didn't end on land. He spent decades studying the mysteries of flight. Sitting alone in fields, he watched birds ascend into the sky, noting every adjustment of their wings, every shift of weight, every use of the wind. His notebooks filled with diagrams, flapping wing machines, gliders, and the famous aerial screw, a precursor to the modern helicopter. Technology of the 15th century could not bring these visions to life, but Leonardo was not drawing for his century. He was drawing for the future. His genius, however, remained overshadowed by unfinished works, political upheavals, and shifting alliances. By the early 1500s, he found himself serving one of the most dangerous men in Italy, Cesare Borgia. As Borgia's military engineer, Leonardo designed fortifications, studied weaponry, and created maps with scientific precision. His map of the city of Imola, drawn using a magnetic compass and geometric measurement, was unlike anything the world had seen. It marked the birth of modern cartography, turning cities from symbolic sketches into strategic tools of war. Yet for all his engineering triumphs, Leonardo's greatest legacy in Milan came from his paintbrush. In a silent dining hall of a small monastery, he began work on the Last Supper. Unlike traditional frescoes, Leonardo experimented with a unique mixture of oil and tempera, seeking a level of depth no technique had achieved before. Day after day, he returned to the wall, not always to paint, but to think. Some days he stood motionless for hours, simply imagining the movement of light across the apostles' faces. When the work was finally complete, it was unlike anything the world had witnessed. Through perfect linear perspective, all lines converged upon Christ's forehead, drawing the viewer's gaze to the heart of the moment. The room felt alive, as if one could hear the sudden gasp when Jesus revealed that a betrayer sat among them. Each apostle moved with raw emotion, reacting in shock, disbelief, anger, and sorrow. Judas, shrouded in shadow, leaned back instinctively, clutching the silver that had sealed his betrayal. It was human drama frozen in time. But as Leonardo's genius flourished, Italy fractured. Invading armies stormed Milan, and the Duke who had sheltered Leonardo lost his power. French soldiers destroyed his grand clay model of a monumental horse, using it for target practice. Once again, Leonardo became a wanderer, moving from city to city, seeking patrons, carrying with him a portfolio of unfinished masterpieces and ideas too advanced for his age. Yet even as the world shifted beneath him, Leonardo continued to create. He studied faces, mechanics, water, anatomy, trees, storms, shadows, anything that could be understood, improved, or reinvented. His notebooks grew heavier, his curiosity grew sharper, and quietly he began refining the painting that would define his immortality, the Mona Lisa. To capture her expression, Leonardo relied on everything he had learned: science, anatomy, optics, and the study of human perception. The technique of sfumato, which softened transitions and erased harsh edges, allowed him to sculpt her face with almost imperceptible layers of tone. Her eyes appeared alive because Leonardo understood how light curved across the cornea. Her smile shifted because he understood how the human mind interprets contrast in peripheral vision. The painting was not merely an image, it was an experiment in how we see, how we feel, and how we experience mystery. And in the shadows of this rising masterpiece, Leonardo's life neared its turning point. one that would eventually lead him to the court of a foreign king and into the final chapter of his extraordinary journey. When the Duke of Milan fell, Leonardo's life entered a decade of wandering, shared between Florence, Rome, and the shifting courts of Italy. He carried with him notebooks heavy with inventions, unfinished paintings, and questions that no one else dared ask. Italy was unstable, torn by rival families, foreign invasions, and a church wary of unconventional thinkers. Leonardo, a man guided only by curiosity, found himself out of place in a world driven by politics and war, but fate had other plans. In 1516, King Francis II of France recognized something that others had overlooked. Leonardo's mind itself was a treasure. He invited the aging master to his royal court, offering him a manor beside the king's own chateau. Here, in the quiet green valleys of France, Leonardo found what he had lacked for years: freedom. Freedom to think, to design, to teach, and above all to refine the painting he had carried for so long. The Mona Lisa remained on his easel until the very end of his life. Leonardo retouched her smile, softened her shadows, adjusted the fall of light across her cheeks. To him, perfection was not a destination but a pursuit, a horizon he could travel toward but never fully reach. The subtle smile, the shifting expression, the eyes that follow you across a room, these effects were not accidents. They were deliberate experiments in human perception, designed by a man who understood both emotion and optics better than anyone in his time. Leonardo also returned to the force that had always fascinated and terrified him: water. His final drawings depict cataclysmic floods, collapsing mountains, and swirling storms. These deluge sketches were visions of the world overwhelmed by nature's fury, as if Leonardo, approaching mortality, saw in water a mirror of life itself, powerful, unpredictable, and impossible to control. These works were not meant as warnings to others. They were meditations, reflections of a man contemplating the fragility of existence. On May 2, 1519, at the age of 67, Leonardo da Vinci passed away in his French manor, possibly from a stroke. Though he was not deeply religious, his will began with a humble invocation. First, I commend my soul to our Lord Almighty God and to the glorious Virgin Mary. It was the last line from a man who had spent a lifetime studying the mechanics of the world, yet still believed in mysteries beyond understanding. His journey ended quietly, but his legacy detonated across centuries. Leonardo da Vinci lived at the intersection of disciplines: art, science, anatomy, engineering, optics, geology, flight. He belonged to no single field because his mind refused to be contained by one. He taught us that innovation comes from blending disciplines, that beauty grows from knowledge, and that curiosity, not talent, is the true engine of genius. He never finished many of his projects. He rarely delivered work on time. He doubted himself constantly, yet none of that dimmed his brilliance. Leonardo's genius was not perfection. It was pursuit. The pursuit of understanding everything, from the motion of birds to the structure of the heart, from the anatomy of a smile to the mechanics of a storm. He looked closer than anyone had looked before. He observed with the intensity of someone who believed every detail mattered, and he asked questions so simple yet so profound that no one else thought to ask them. Describe the tongue of the woodpecker. This was not the note of a distracted mind. It was the note of a mind incapable of ignoring wonder. Today, Leonardo is remembered not because he painted or invented or engineered, but because he united knowledge and imagination. His art is science, his science is art, and through that union, he changed the trajectory of human creativity forever. If there is one message Leonardo leaves us, carved not into stone but into the legacy of his life, it is this: curiosity is limitless, boundaries are illusions, and genius is not a gift. It is a habit. Through thousands of pages, dozens of masterpieces, and visions centuries ahead of their time, Leonardo da Vinci proved something extraordinary. A single human mind, driven by relentless curiosity, can reshape the story of the world.